Hello again, everybody. I want this story to be about how we came to buy the orchard. And it begins, well, probably long before this. But when I was born in Indiana and grew up there, I grew up as the space program was beginning. And I wanted to participate, but I didn't want to be an astronaut. That's a dangerous job. So I went to Purdue University, graduated with an engineering degree, and had to stay around an extra year to get my wife Judy. And I got a master's degree too, but Judy was more important than the master's degree. Went to work for IBM 20 days after we graduated, 10 days after we were married. That's 59 years ago and counting. At IBM, the first thing that I did that was really worth anything in the space area was this. IBM had given Dr. von Braun and his team, the folks in charge of the really big boosters that got us on the way to the moon, 3 rockets stacked on top of each other. Well, we had a model of how those computers and how the system would work. He had prepared it with his folks, and we had given him a computer to be the guidance for the rocket. He called us back a couple of months after he got it and said, "Come and get it. We don't want it. It puts us in the wrong orbits. We want to be in 100 miles, and this keeps putting us in a 130-mile orbit. So we can't use this computer." My job was to find out why our computer did the wrong thing to their model. Went to Huntsville, Alabama, beginning of my visit there. The beginning of 17 years in Huntsville, Alabama. Little did I know at the time. When I got there, I met the folks and asked to see how the hookup was between our model and theirs, our computer and theirs. And I started off trying to find our error. After trying everything I knew, I couldn't find a single thing wrong with our computer or the information that it was giving out. I just didn't know if it was getting the right information in from the government model. Turned out that's where the problem was. And I convinced them to do the work in double precision, and lo and behold, our computer started doing marvels when their model was right. So that led to a lot of contract work for IBM, and I was responsible for the software that got us launched into orbit and on the way to the moon from those big rockets. Then I could breathe again. And our job was finished for that flight. Well, okay, fast forward now, 32 years with IBM. Came time I wanted to retire. And I wanted to retire to little Switzerland. So I did. And I was prepared because in little Switzerland I knew we didn't do a lot of rocket work. So I was going to have to do something else. I took up weaving. It is, after all, digital in the sense that one thread is over the other or under it. And that's the decision you make when you weave, with all the threads, whether they go under or over and at what time in the weaving. So I was having fun with that. Sister Kit came to visit. 1993 is when we retired. 94 is when this story begins now. She came to visit. I thought, to just talk about things. She was a recent widow, and she had the kids had left, and she was at a unique place in her life when she was really all on her own again. I thought we would have a good conversation. 10 minutes later, she said I was the only type A left brain weaver she'd seen, and she had seen enough. So she went over and sat down in the corner and read the Spruce Pine newspaper, cover to cover. Comes out on Wednesday. If she'd been there any other day of the week, we would not own the orchard. If she'd kept talking to me, we would not own the orchard. Instead, she went over and read the newspaper. Didn't know anybody in it, but she kept reading, and she got to the want ads. And in the want ads, she saw this orchard advertised for sale. The thing we knew about the orchard was it had been an orchard, and a prosperous one, long before the Blue Ridge Parkway chose to come through this area. And they wanted to come right through part of the orchard. A word or two about the orchard. It was started in 1903 by the Clinchfield Railroad. And even today, the bottom dimension, the bottom fence, the bottom of the orchard is the Clinchfield Railroad, now CSX. And it goes from the railroad clear to the top of the mountain, right at the Continental Divide, which is along the crest of the Blue Ridge here. So think about it. The orchard starts at the railroad, ends at the top of the mountain. Parkway wanted to come through, so it had to buy some land from what was then a prosperous orchard. And they did. About, maybe 100-foot path through the middle of an operating orchard. Fast forward now to when Sis saw the ad in the Spruce Pine newspaper to sell this orchard. The thing we knew was it was private land on both sides of the parkway for the entire length of 1.5 miles. And in Sis's mind, she could see houses springing up on both sides of the parkway and spoiling an unspoiled view. So, 2 hours after seeing the ad, she called the number in the paper, bought the farm on the phone when the guy picked it up. She didn't know, and he didn't know, she was not the first caller. He had just walked in time to get her phone. There were 4 other calls wanting to buy the place on his answering machine. Well, one of them turned out to have been not only a developer, but a person who had done an aerial survey of the land above the parkway and had a landscape architect to lay out the location of 140 houses and roads and all, running right along the top of the Blue Ridge Parkway, clear to the crest of the mountain. He was heartbroken, mad, when he didn't even get to bid on the orchard. And he invited Sis and I to come and hear his story and talk about what might happen. Well, we went. He unfurled on his kitchen table the plat that he had made on that aerial survey with all those home sites on it. He started offering Sis money, lots of money, more than she paid. That wasn't working. He offered her a partnership in his development. That didn't work. He finally ran out of offers. Well, I kid her a little bit. If he'd offered marriage, it might have done some good, but I'm sure it wouldn't have. And it was just a tease that sometimes I use with Sis. But she left the meeting frightened. She was frightened that the land apparently was worth so much more than she had paid for it, that someday her heirs might heir and sell that land for a profit to a developer. So she thought about it. How could she make sure that never happened? The way she came up with not only preserved that part of her land, but an additional 3,000 acres here in the mountains. It was this. She sold the land to the Conservation Trust for North Carolina. a nonprofit organization that specializes in land along the parkway and its preservation. They bought that land from her above the parkway and then proceeded to negotiate with all the other individual landowners that could be seen from the parkway or from our back deck. And they got an easement on all that land, and now 3,000 more acres have been added to the land that will never be developed, following my sister's lead.
For these are my mountains, and this is my glen, the breeze of my childhood will know me again. No lands ever claim me, though far I did wrong. But these are my mountains, and I'm coming home. For fame and for fortune, I've wandered the earth, and now I've returned to this land of my birth. I've brought back my treasures, but only to find they're less than the pleasures that I first left behind. For these are my mountains, and this is my glen, the breeze of my childhood will know me again. No lands ever claim me, though far I did wrong. But these are my mountains, and I'm coming home. Kind faces will meet me and welcome me in. They'll run up to greet me, my ain kith and kin. This night by the fireside, old songs will be sung, and at last I'll be hearing my own mother's tongue. For these are my mountains, and this is my glen, the breeze of my childhood will know me again. No lands ever claim me, though far I did wrong. For these are my